Hi everyone, my name is Amy Anderson and I am the Director of Business Development at Zend. One of my primary responsibilities is to manage the IBM Alliance. So I first started working on the AS400 in 1997 and worked on that for several years over the I series and then the IBM I. Let's talk a little bit about, my slide says leverage what you've got. And that's really the message that we have here is we have all the technologies that you need in order to really build the solutions that you have to get to. So here's some pressures that we see happening. Older systems need upgrading, but we have these core business applications that are written in RPG or COBOL. There is a tremendous amount of corporate intelligence. There's a tremendous amount of business knowledge and business logic wrapped into those applications. So the idea that you can just sweep it away and start with some new package is quite daunting because that says you're going to lose a lot of that intelligence. So yes, we've all been talking about modernization for 20 years. One of the things that we saw very early on were what we affectionately referred to as screen scraping tools. And the message was, buy this, something cheap and cheerful, and it's just going to grab your green screen and dump it out to a web interface, and you can make it pretty later, it'll be fine. And that is fine, but not all of those tools. Some of those tools have moved very well into delivering web and mobile interfaces. Some of those tools have done very well in terms of API enablement, but not all of them have. So there's a bit of risk in some of those tools in getting left behind. Now the other thing that's going on, I kind of call it the Appification of your industry. It's the idea, Airbnb, they rent more rooms, they don't own a single one. Every industry has been impacted in some way by this, the web and mobile apps that are emerging all over the place. People like to refer to themselves as the Uber of their industry. So it's happening in every single industry, and you cannot wait for the next fad to take it over. It is happening. So all that logic, again, is sitting in your core business applications, and you have to find a way to deliver it to all of these devices. And by the way, those devices are working in APIs. So we have to be able to take what we've got and shoot it out through an API. So slightly different skill set that we need to deliver. And again, that's not just a screen scraping. That is, I got to build and manage APIs. And the other thing that we know about that is anybody can build an API. Even I can build an API. But to manage and maintain a library of APIs that have version control, that have security, that have documentation, that allows someone else to come in and take over this stuff after you move on to the next job, that's hard. And so we need a way to manage some of that. So what is Zend Server? Now we mentioned Zend, the company, is the PHP company. I almost always, when I say Zend, I say the PHP company. PHP is an open source programming language that was originally developed in the late 90s, but it was meant to be a programming language for web pages, essentially. And it has grown up and matured and evolved over time. And I think that's one of the compelling features of PHP is that it has withstood the test of time. It has evolved and modernized itself. So there's a great level of confidence you can have in working with PHP. So PHP is open source. It is the most popular programming language in the world for web and mobile applications. Google estimates that 65% of the world's web pages are built with PHP. And what Zend does is Zend is the commercial offering of PHP. So if you're familiar with how open source works, if you've ever bought Red Hat, you understand Linux is open source. Red Hat provides the service and support on top of it. Zend provides the service and support on top of PHP. In addition, and unlike Red Hat, we also provide additional features and functions that you cannot get in the open source world. So we have the core, the open source core. We're not a fork of open source. We are the core of PHP, and then we provide additional features on top of that. And then we can run anywhere. We support Linux platforms. We run on Amazon, Microsoft Azure. We run on Docker, Google Cloud. So we support many clouds. But importantly, we have been supporting IBM I natively in the PACE environment since 2005. So again, a lot of heritage there. Our development team knows the power processor. We understand how this system works, and we've been building on it for many, many years. Now, what do you actually use PHP for? And this is important, especially when we're talking about all these legacy applications. We are not coming in here and saying you should rip and replace your RPG in COBOL. In fact, I think you should all leave your RPG in COBOL where it is and leverage what you've got and take advantage of all the business intelligence that's sitting in those systems, because you can't replicate that part. But what do we do? Well, we provide, and here are some of our best use cases of things that we do. In the middle, this says application modernization. I'll have a couple examples as we go forward of how we do that. But we also see a lot of, up in the right-hand corner there, it says content management. That's WordPress, Drupal, Joomla. If you're building websites, you need some kind of a tool to help you keep track of all the pages and the images and the assets and all that sort of thing. A lot of people know WordPress because they have a friend that had a baby and built a little blog, and now there's lots of pictures. Yes, you can do that with WordPress, but you can also use it for serious business content management solutions. WordPress, Drupal, and Joomla are all built on PHP. So they're running underneath. E-commerce is another huge use case that we see. That is, any kind of I'm building a commerce site. Magento is the #1 e-commerce solution in the world. That runs on PHP. Up in the left corner, it says mobile and APIs. And you see a little logo there that says App Agility. 2 years ago, we came out with this offering called App Agility, which is really just a very simple interface that is a very prescriptive approach to building APIs. So, and I think that's important as an IBM I community. You're used to a fairly prescriptive approach on how to do things. One of the reasons the AS400 was so successful is that IBM kind of had everybody do the same things the same way. We have subsystems. We have that one database. So it was a very prescriptive approach to building business solutions, and we're doing that with APIs. App Agility actually is in the open source community, so you can download it, play with it, look at it, and really start to figure out how to take advantage of that. We've recently added some capabilities so that you can display a DB2 table and start to pick your columns that you want to pull the data from if you're doing a get, for example. We do have some data-centric business applications, a couple of CRM apps. If you know Sugar CRM, that's built on PHP. So we do have some of those applications. And then finally, reporting and dashboards. Because PHP is fairly simple to use, it's simple to build web pages. We see a lot of people using it for simple reporting, KPIs, dashboards, that sort of thing. We are not claiming to go in and replace a Cognos, a big six-figure analytics kind of solution. That's not what we're talking about here. More of your kind of simple, I just need this KPI dashboard for my executive team. So those are the typical kinds of use cases that we have. I want to just talk about one in particular, Sun State Equipment. They're also in the Phoenix area. It's equipment rental, big bulldozers and stuff. And when the equipment comes back from a rental, it goes into a repair bay or shop where they put it in a bay. As somebody goes through a checklist and evaluates everything that needs to be fixed or replaced or whatever. And the mechanics, in order to do their job, they've got the equipment in the bay. In order to do anything with the equipment, they had to walk over to a little kiosk that everybody shared like one system, And if they actually needed to order inventory, they had to fill out a piece of paper. And they have, I don't know, 5 different RPG systems that are running inventory and all different aspects of the business. What they were able to do is build an application that runs on tablets. Now, each mechanic has a tablet in the bay, and they do everything off the tablet. The checklist, inventory ordering, parts replacement, everything happens on the tablet. The tablet is now the central view of the entire business. They were just trying to make the mechanics more efficient. What they got out of it was better inventory management. So they're saving money, improving mechanic efficiency, and also the mechanics are actually happier. There was one of the older mechanics that when they started the project, he said, "I'm not using the tablet, not doing it." And by the time they got done with the project, the guy said, "I will only work in the Phoenix location because they have the tablets, and I will not go to that other location because they don't have the tablets yet." So how can you get started? We talk about simple CRUD applications, CRUD, create, read, update, delete, the basic things you want to do with data on any kind of an interface. With PHP, you can do something in a single day. And we have a couple of different ways to help you do that. But you can literally start pulling data out of your application and displaying it on a web page. If you need to show somebody in your executive team, hey, leave the eye alone because I can do this for you. If you don't like green screens, if you've got somebody that says, if I see one more green screen, everybody's fired, we can help. And then we're saying in about 10 days, and again, depending on how you want to do this, we can bring in our experts, we can provide training, there's a lot of ways we can do this. We can get a very nice looking interface in 10 days. Not hard at all. And if we want to get to that API-enabled, object-oriented language, very agile process, we're saying, I'll say 90 days really, but the 10, 110, 100 sounds better. But really in 90 days, you can have this working. So this is a very doable thing. And one of the things about PHP is that you can start with a very procedural approach, so it looks and feels like procedural programming, whether it's RPG or COBOL. And as you get comfortable with it, you can move more into object-oriented principles and techniques. This is just some of the customers. These are all IBMI customers who are running Zend Server. You see we got Value Drug Mart in Canada, Swift Transportation, a great success story of modernizing a transportation business. We see a lot of success, and actually another success story that I want to mention, and I don't think they're on here, is Mission Produce, based in Oxnard, California, the world's largest producer of avocados. Who knew? Mission Produce provides that. Again, a system. They had trucks going in and out of the groves. They're trying to manage inventory, and trucks literally all over with people speaking all different languages. And what they did is they developed a mobile application so that the driver could say, I'm leaving the grove now, I'm heading to the warehouse. We keep track of how many crates of avocados were in the truck, get them delivered. So again, drastically improved the efficiency of the drivers, drastically improved inventory management, which has a very direct effect, obviously, on their profitability. Now, one thing I just want to mention, make a little advertisement for another area where I spend some of my time. Now, you've all heard IBM talk about Linux on Power since about 4 or 5, 10 years. First of all, the Linux on Power that IBM had up until 2 years ago was what we call Big Indian Linux, and the Linux that runs on x86 is called Little Indian Linux. Indian with an E, E-N-D-I-A-N. Big Indian versus Little Indian. The only difference is you lay the bits down left to right or right to left. It's a weird technical discrepancy, but it prevented, because Power was always Big Indian, it prevented Little Indian Linux from running on the system. 2 years ago, IBM said, we're going to put Little Indian Linux on a Power 8. And that's what they did. So we've had the ability to run Little Indian Linux on Power 8. That changes the game somewhat because now you can take all of these, half of the world's websites that are written on PHP on Linux, they're all running on x86. Now you can literally pick those up and drop them down on Power. So that changed the game for us. We started working with IBM on this. As of June of this year, IBM now supports Little Indian Linux in a partition on a Power 8 system sitting side by side with your IBM I. This really changes the game for certain situations. The first situation, you have an executive that comes in and says, any new application is going to be on Linux. Or they say, I will not see any web and mobile applications on an IBM I. I know customers that are in this situation. We're now in a position where we can say, okay, fine, good, not a problem. We're just going to carve out a little LPAR over here, and we're going to run that application there. Even though you could run the exact same application on your IBM I, if there's some political situation that says it needs to be on Linux, we can put it on your box. So if we're trying to justify the Power 8 upgrade, and you're having a hard time getting that justification done, you can say, well, here's some Linux applications that we can put on the Power 8, because of course this Big Indian, Little Indian thing needs Power 8. So we can now say, yeah, let's do that upgrade because we can get these newer applications on there. And we have seen some of our customers use that as a way to get that Power 8 upgrade done. So, and the other piece of this is we've done a little bit of benchmarking with Magento on this particular configuration. And one of the things, Magento is well known throughout the industry as a performance dog. It's the most popular commerce solution, yes. Everybody knows it performs badly. So what we've been able to do is run some benchmarks, and we had one benchmark on Power Linux where we were trying to test equal configurations of Power Linux versus x86 on a Haswell. And we were just at first trying to see how much faster could Power 8 do than the Haswell system. The first thing we saw is that Haswell could only run 300 users. We could run 900. So, again, you want to talk about being able to get the most for your processing dollar. That's pretty compelling. And we were running faster, by the way, as well. That was a test in the lab, but still, I think it's compelling. So, a couple of things. PHP runs best on Power 8. Power 8 actually runs any interpreted language or dynamic language. PHP is an interpreted dynamic language. That means it's not compiled. Any language that's not compiled will run faster on Power 8 than it does on Power 7 because IBM changed how instructions are handled for dynamic languages. So you're going to be faster out of the box on Power 8. We've also got coming, and I haven't even talked about this, the latest version of PHP is PHP 7. That's coming out literally any day. We know it's 5 times faster than the existing PHP. So if you got PHP on PHP 7 and Power 8, you're going to be screaming fast. PHP is supported by a community worldwide of more than 5 million developers. So you want to talk about a skills issue? Concerned about your RPG resources? Bring in those PHP developers, sit them down next to the RPG guys, and let's do some skills transfer. We have a lot of skills out there we can bring to the table. A lot of PHP developers use frameworks of different kinds. There's different kinds of frameworks out there. The latest Zend framework, and that's really just a collection of libraries and tools that you can use to write more effectively. Zend Framework 3 is, and most of them are object-oriented, by the way. Zend Framework 3 is object-oriented, but if you're not an object-oriented developer, it's easier to use because it's easier to kind of pick and choose the components that you want to use. So again, if you're trying to make that transition from a procedural approach to an object-oriented approach, a good way to go. And then also App Agility provides that prescriptive, repeatable process for building APIs, and trust me, we'll all need this. We are happy to provide a proof of concept. If you're trying to demonstrate, I want to show that this, and again, going back to that 10 days, what can I do in 10 days? We'll come in and do a proof of concept in 10 days, build an application specific to you with your data so that you can really demonstrate that this is a viable way to move forward and to move the business forward without losing all that valuable logic and intelligence that's built into your systems.